Steam filled the showers when the first insult hit. You'll never make it. You don't belong here. 3 recruits laughed, convinced the smallest woman in the room was a mistake in SEAL training. But in less than an hour, they'd learned the truth. The weakest link was their commander in disguise. How does ridicule turn into stunned silence? How does a simple woman flip an entire base upside down and expose a traitor hiding among them? Stay with me, because the reveal will change everything you think you know about strength, loyalty, and war. And before we dive in, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for A Simple Woman, the place where untold stories hit harder than the history books ever could. Steam curled off the tiled walls when the first laugh cut through it. You'll never make it. You don't belong here. The words hit Aria Vô like pebbles against armor. Audible, negligible, already forgotten. Alarm beacons pulsed somewhere deeper in the facility, bathing the wet floor in red bands of light. 3 recruits, Taryn Blake up front with the squared shoulders, Rosa Vega practical and tight-lipped, Cara Quinn jittery and eager to impress, watched the smallest woman in the room knot a towel with the calm of someone tying a sail in a storm. They made a sport of reading her body like a weakness chart. Short, narrow-shouldered, quiet, ordinary. The only thing they didn't read was the way her eyes tracked mirrors without seeming to, catching angles and exits and the reflection of a stranger's black tactical glove tucked, careless and wrong, on a stack of folded linens by the door. She lifted her gaze past it. No flinch, no tell. The glove could wait. The mission couldn't. "Hey, Thumbelina," Taryn said, voice bouncing off porcelain. "When they find out you can't carry a wounded teammate, you'll be back filing forms by Monday." Aria squeezed water from her hair and set the towel on the bench like she was placing a stone on a grave, soft, deliberate, final. "Then you won't have to see me at all," she said and walked past. Her bare feet didn't splash. They just arrived and departed the way she did in every room, leaving people uncertain if she'd been there long enough to deserve a goodbye. Master Chief Ron Donnelly waited in the corridor with a clipboard and the weathered face of someone who'd seen promises and funerals on the same day. He didn't glance at her towel or the steam still rising from her shoulders. He watched the angle of her breath and the evenness of her pulse. "Formation on the grinder in 2, he said. "Obstacle series, carry protocol, team assignments posted." "Yes, Chief." He didn't tell her. He knew the ductwork over Building C rattled wrong during crosswinds from the inlet, or that he'd watched her pull Rosa out of a shallow water blackout last week, so fast the lifeguard hadn't even stood. He didn't tell her he'd seen the way she undershot every metric by half a second, half a point, half an ounce, as if the margins were her camouflage. Donnelly simply watched her walk away and made a note, not on the paper, but in the part of his mind where he stored answers to questions no one was allowed to ask. Outside, fog off the Pacific hugged the ground like a secret. The grinder's paint was a suggestion beneath grit. Recruits formed lines with the urgent sloppiness of people trying to look calm. Taryn's chin lifted when she saw the assignments: Blake, Vega, Quinn, Vô, plus 2 others, Nyla Hoff and June Park. Rosa's mouth tightened. Cara bounced her knee like it had a metronome set to panic. Aria scanned. "The way you look at a chessboard before you touch a piece." "The rules," Donnelly barked. "1 casualty per team. Rotate him or her as you see fit. Over under walls, rope climb, sand sprint to the pool complex, submerged tunnel transit, finish on the incline with precision fire. Missed shots mean penalty carries." He tapped the clipboard. "And no heroes. Heroes die. Professionals finish." Taryn took leadership like a reflex. "Rosa's our casualty," she announced. "She's the lightest. Cara, front carry. I'll take middle. Aria, rear. Try not to slow us down." Aria just nodded. The smart play is to argue strategy when you're trusted or silent when you're not. She moved into position, fingers finding the balance point at Rosa's hip as if she'd lifted this weight in 3 countries under 3 flags. Rosa didn't look back. She faced forward, eyes sharp, mind already mapping the wall holds and rope angles. The whistle split the fog, teams surged. The first barrier line chewed ankles and pride. Kara banged a shin and bit off a curse. Taryn took too much weight too soon and tried to muscle the 12-foot wall like it owed her a favor. Rosa slipped. The world tilted. Aria didn't announce the fix. She became it. She slid under Rosa's legs, braced her foot against a knot in the lumber, and converted fall into lift. Center of mass, she murmured, guide-roped by tone rather than rank. Hips first. Hook your left knee. Good. Taryn's head whipped around long enough to register that the person she'd written off had just saved her a public failure. Then pride snapped her gaze front again. They crested the wall, breath-making smoke in the cold. The rope climb rewarded rhythm, punished ego. Aria gave Kara a single palm against her shoe, light, steady, just enough for confidence, not enough to announce that help had been given. Kara reached and found the next knot like it was always there, like she'd always been this sure. Sand sprint. Ankles sank, lungs asked expensive questions. The pool complex rose ahead, greenish water churning under fluorescence. The submerged tunnel waited, a concrete throat 30 meters long, low and black, the kind of space where panic is a language and oxygen is a countdown. At the edge, Taryn pretended not to stare at the dark. "We go on my count," she said, hands on Rosa, no gaps. "If you lose contact, you won't," Aria said, not a challenge, just a fact she had decided to make true. She looked at Rosa. "We exit in one breath. Don't fight the guide rope. Exhale slow. Think thin." Rosa's pupils clicked smaller. "Copy," they went under. Sound changed first to the throb of pumps and the skin drum hit of water against skull. Vision narrowed to the dirty halo of a waterproof light and the pale thread of the guide rope skimming under their fingers. Taryn's strength didn't help here. Panic feeds on power until it owns it. At 11 meters, air became a promise too far away to whisper. Kara's legs spasmed and kicked the rope. The line snaked, slapping concrete. Rosa gagged once and fought it down. Taryn's exhale quickened into betrayal. Aria felt it spread along the chain of hands the way a tremor runs through rail. She let go. A calculated sin slid beneath, flipped, and replaced Taryn's grip on Rosa's waist in a blind trade that cost 2 seconds and bought a life. Her free hand found Taryn's wrist and pressed. "Slow down, follow me." She carried them all three in the language of water, less force, more form. The tunnel's black throat widened to a paler square. They rose as one organism, breaking surface like they'd always intended to at exactly that second, air slamming back into them with the sweetness of forgiveness. On the deck, Taryn yanked her arm away as if the pressure had burned. "I had it," she snapped between coughs. "You did," Aria said, "because giving someone a future means choosing which parts of the past to erase." The incline range waited. Rifle stations staggered up the hill like questions with consequences. Rosa's roll ended at the chalk line. She rolled her shoulders and stepped aside, eyes on the horizon like she could see a shore she'd once sworn to. Donnelly's voice came from somewhere between a growl and a prayer. 5 targets each, moving plates. Wind's real today, not a simulator. Carry the pack while you shoot. If you can't shoot tired, you can't shoot. Kara went first, hands buzzing. 3 hits, 2 misses. Nyla 4 and 1. June 4 and 1. Taryn shouldered the rifle like a dare and yanked shots the way angry people pull doors. 2 hits. She set the weapon down too hard and stared at it as if it had betrayed her, not her breath. Aria took the pack from the ground and slung it over one shoulder as casually as if it were a purse on a Sunday sidewalk. She didn't widen her stance or perform confidence for the viewing angles. She found the sight picture and let the reticle stop wandering. Plates dropped like yeses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No one clapped. Instructors don't reward gravity for making things fall. Rosa exhaled through her nose, somewhere between relief and respect. Kara blinked like her eyelids were late. Taryn's jaw worked, clenching around words that had too many edges to be safe in a mouth. On the downslope, A man in base security khaki and a polite smile watched with an interest he hid inside courtesy. Major Evan Pierce nodded at Donnelly without interrupting. His gaze lingered half a heartbeat too long on Aria, then moved on, like a camera panning past a detail that would matter later when the cut returned to it. The whistle sent teams to recovery. People sprawled on mats, made jokes to hide the way their ribs felt like cages around hot animals. Aria sat with her back against a column and let her heart rate unwind on schedule. That's when Taryn arrived, shadow falling across Aria's knees. The room had that pre-storm hush, the one where everyone pretends not to listen. "You think you fooled anyone?" Taryn asked, voice low and sharp. "You think no one saw those tricks? The underwater swap? The wall leverage? We're supposed to be learning that next month." Aria looked up at her like at a horizon line. Accurate, distant, measuring distance by air more than miles. "I think we all finished," she said. Taryn leaned closer, heat and salt and pride. "I don't need your charity saves. You didn't get any," Aria said, and somehow made it sound generous. "Where'd you learn the tunnel transfer?" Rosa asked from Taryn's elbow, not accusing, not friendly, just curious from the same place her competence lived. "Quantico Pool," Aria said. It was true enough to survive fact-checking and false enough to protect what mattered. Master Chief Donnelly's boots announced him first. He didn't look at Taryn or Rosa. He looked at Aria and then past her, at a middle distance where decisions sit before they're made. "Interesting performance," he said, flat as a file. "Someone here moves like they were taught by people who aren't on my payroll." "Lucky day," Taryn said quickly, hitching her shoulders as if the compliment might land there by mistake. Donnelly's eyes didn't visit her. Luck doesn't breathe like that under 30 meters. A radio squawked from the far wall, "Base ops." The voice was clipped, trying not to drag panic into the open. "Chief Donnelly, copy. We have a minor systems fault at Building C, possibly wind shear on the external sensor. The ductwork over Building C did rattle wrong during crosswinds. It also rattled when someone who knew what they were doing wanted it to sound like wind." Aria didn't move. She wouldn't be the one to move first. Not yet. "Copy," Donnelly said. He lifted the radio, but his eyes were on Aria, in the way a lighthouse looks at a ship that hasn't declared its flag. Later, someone would say that everything began here, in the steam in the pool, on the incline, when the smallest woman in the class started collecting small truths and tucking them where only she could reach. For now, all that began was lunch, and the kind of chatter that tries to stitch ordinary over a rip in the fabric. In the chow hall, metal trays clattered like applause they didn't mean. Taryn took a seat across from Aria without asking, Rosa sliding in beside her, Kara hovering like a thought she wasn't sure she should say out loud. Aria ate like she did everything, measured, unhurried, eyes quiet and busy at once. "Where were you stationed before this?" Taryn asked, picking up interrogation like she'd been issued it. "No one's seen a file. Donnelly says you breathe like a diver who's paid for it with blood. People say a lot of things when they're tired," Aria said. "Dodging isn't a strategy," Rosa said. "It's a timeline." "Timeline for what? For when we stop trusting you?" Aria set her fork down. "Trust is a consequence," she said, not unkindly, not a vote. Kara finally boiled over into a word. "You saved me in the tunnel." "You saved yourself," Aria said. "I just reminded you where the rope was." Outside the chow hall windows, fog thinned. The inlet wind shifted. Somewhere across the base, a door sensor clicked, paused, and lied about what it had just seen. Donnelly listened to the radio a little too long. Major Pierce smiled at a monitor no one else was looking at. In the laundry room off the showers, a single black tactical glove waited on a stack of towels, obedient as a dog, patient as a trap. Aria finished her water and stood. "See you at the afternoon block," she said. "Count on it," Taryn replied, but what she meant sounded closer to, "I'm going to find out what you are." Aria walked out into the light that couldn't decide if it was morning or noon. The air smelled like salt and metal and the inside of a secret. She passed a maintenance cart and an unfamiliar civilian with auburn hair pushing it, the medical contractor they'd hired for the week to fill in for a sick corpsman. The woman's eyes flicked over Aria and away. Harmless, invisible, efficient. Good disguises never wave. Aria didn't look back. She didn't have to. She could feel it. The tiny shifts, the almosts, the not-yets. The story wasn't moving toward her. She was moving toward the story, one breath, one choice, one unclaimed glove at a time. The chow hall had gone from loud to surgical silence. Metal trays, gossip, laughter, cut clean when Taryn leaned across the table and asked the question everyone had been circling since dawn. "Where were you stationed before this, Aria? Because you don't move like someone learning for the first time. You move like you've done this in the dark, with lives on the line." Rosa Vega backed her up, not hostile, just sharp. "It's not just strength, it's efficiency. That wall maneuver, that's leveraged like you'd been taught at an advanced school, and the tunnel swap, no way you improvise that." Her voice carried, intentional, so half the room paused mid-bite to catch it. Cara Quinn shifted, uncomfortable under the attention. She pulled me through. I panicked down there. She knew exactly how to stop me from choking. Gratitude tangled with fear in her tone. She wanted to defend Aria, but she also wanted to know the truth. Aria set her fork down and folded her hands as though praying for patience. Her voice was calm, like a medic delivering bad news. "People underestimate what desperation teaches you. Sometimes survival looks like training." Taryn wasn't satisfied. She leaned closer, chin jutted forward like a bayonet. "Training doesn't explain classified files missing from your record. It doesn't explain how a chief who's seen everything keeps staring at you like a riddle." She jabbed a finger toward Donnelly, who happened to be entering at that moment with his clipboard tucked under one arm. His gaze flicked to the table, then away, unreadable. Donnelly stopped just inside the doorway. Blake, Vega, Quinn, Vô, office after meal. His tone had no volume to spare. "Bring your questions with you, I'll bring mine." He walked out without waiting for an answer. Taryn smirked, like she'd been handed a verdict in her favor. Rosa's eyes narrowed, calculating. Cara exhaled through pursed lips. Aria returned to her meal, chewing each bite as though it were her last ordinary one. That evening the office smelled of salt air and old coffee. Donnelly sat behind his scarred desk, lamp burning low, shadows carving lines deeper in his face. Taryn, Rosa, Cara, and Aria sat in the hard chairs lined like suspects. Donnelly tapped the eraser of a pencil against the desk. "Your records say Navy officer. Standard tours, nothing out of range. But I've run checks. Half your files redacted. Redactions aren't standard unless someone upstairs has reasons." Aria kept her eyes level. "Redactions are above all our pay grades, Chief." He studied her long enough to make silence feel like pressure. "You breathe steady under stress. Your timing is surgical. Those things aren't accidents, they're signatures." He leaned forward. "I've seen Rangers, Recon, Delta. You move like them, cleaner even. So the question is, why are you sitting in my class pretending to be one of them?" Before Aria could answer, the door opened and Major Evan Pierce stepped in, all courtesy and polished khaki. "Evening, Chief, ladies." His smile was reassuring, almost disarming. "Base security asked me to follow up on some irregularities, minor things, building sensors misfiring, storage inventories off by a decimal." He let his eyes settle briefly on Aria. "Just routine." Donnelly's jaw flexed. "Routine doesn't bring a major into my office during training hours. Nor does an officer with half a redacted record," Pierce said smoothly. His tone was polite, but the undertone was steel. "I'll be in touch." He left as quickly as he'd come, leaving the room 10 degrees colder. The recruits exchanged glances. Taryn smelled blood. "See? Even he thinks you don't belong here." Aria rose from her chair. "Belonging is measured at the finish line, not the starting blocks." She stepped past them, out the door, pulse steady even as her mind reeled. Pierce's interest wasn't casual. He'd looked at her like he was measuring a rival, not a recruit. Night dragged its blanket across the base. Wind howled down the inlet, rattling ducts and shivering chain link. At 23:47, an alarm ripped the silence. Code red, Building C, classified materials vault, unauthorized access. The speakers barked orders, lockdown protocol. All personnel remain in place. Aria was already moving, not toward Building C. The smart play wasn't to chase a shadow, but to the server room adjoining the vault. She slipped inside, heart sinking with the pulsing red lights. From her pocket she pulled a device no recruit should own, a thumb-sized beacon disguised as a keychain. She snapped it into the data port. A honeypot file flickered alive, decoy operational procedures laced with a delayed tracker. Whoever touched it would think they'd scored gold, only to carry a parasite tagging every move they made. She pressed the final sequence. The beacon's light went dark, but its silent heartbeat pulsed into the network. Aria erased her trace and left without leaving more than a scuff mark on the floor. At 0:12, Donnelly's radio crackled. Chief, Building C entry confirmed. Camera feeds disrupted. Intruder in fatigues, face concealed, in and out in under 3 minutes. His knuckles whitened around the radio. Copy, lock the grid. Elsewhere, cameras caught something odd. The laundry annex outside the showers. A civilian medic contractor, auburn hair, carts stacked with linens, pushing past the restricted corridor. She didn't look left or right, just kept rolling, wheels squeaking in rhythm. No alarm tripped, no guard stopped her. She vanished off camera, but Aria's mind snagged on the detail, the same hair, the same gait as she'd passed earlier. The medic no one noticed, the one disguise everyone trusted. By one, the base was a net of searchlights and locked doors. MPs combed through bunks, storage, even trash bins. Every recruit was accounted for. Every staff officer too. Which left only one truth: the infiltrator was still inside, wrapped in someone else's identity. At 1:23, the command center's board lit up. The honeypot file had been accessed. The beacon pulsed alive. Whoever the thief was, they now carried Aria's tag. Donnelly stared at the screen as if it were an X-ray of a tumor. Whoever it is, we've got their pulse. Aria said nothing. She'd given them a line, a lure, but catching a fish meant knowing who else was in the water watching. And Major Pierce had been watching far too closely. The next morning, recruits assembled on the grinder under a sky bruised by dawn. Eyes darted, whispers flew. Everyone knew about Building C, everyone knew the base had been compromised, and everyone looked, consciously or not, at Aria Vô, the quiet one who somehow walked through storms without flinching. The circle was closing. The command center smelled of too much coffee and too little sleep. Master Chief Donnelly stood at the map table, boots planted, hands flat. Major Evan Pierce leaned casually against the wall, a file folder tucked under one arm like he owned the place. Recruits were herded in, Taryn Blake fiery with suspicion, Rosa Vega watchful, Cara Quinn pale with nerves, and Aria Vô moving like a shadow carrying its own silence. Donnelly's voice cut first. Last night wasn't weather. Someone bypassed Building C's vault. Someone knew exactly where to go and what to take. He looked at each of them as if eyes could be fingerprints. And someone here isn't who they claim. Taryn snapped her head toward Aria. Finally. You going to tell us who she really is, Chief? Because I'm tired of training next to a ghost. Ghosts don't carry you through tunnels, Cara blurted. Her face flushed, but the words were out. She saved me, twice. Or staged it, Taryn fired back. Make herself look like a hero while she runs her own game. Rosa cut in, sharper than both. This isn't about bruised pride. Files were taken. We're compromised. Pointing at each other won't close the leak. Aria watched the volley with an unreadable expression. Finally, she spoke. Trust is earned in outcomes, not in stories. When the dust settles, you'll see who was working for you and who wasn't. Pierce cleared his throat, polite as always. We've reviewed the camera logs. Every recruit was accounted for during the breach. Every instructor as well. That leaves external contractors or anomalies in the system. His eyes lingered on Aria just a moment too long. Donnelly grunted. Anomalies don't walk on two legs. He tapped a control. A screen lit with grainy footage. A civilian medic with auburn hair pushing a cart past a restricted corridor. No authorization, no check-in. Right through. Whispers rustled like paper. Kara swallowed hard. That's the medic who brought fresh bandages to the showers yesterday. Rosa's gaze sharpened. She moved like she knew exactly where she was going. Taryn folded her arms. Convenient. Maybe our mystery recruit has a friend. She meant Aria, and everyone heard it. Aria didn't rise to the bait. She pointed at the timestamp on the footage. That's 3 minutes before the vault was breached. Whoever she is, she's not just patching sprains. She's a courier. Donnelly's radio crackled. Control to command. Beacon triggered. Honeypot file accessed at 1:23. Signal still pulsing. All heads turned. Aria kept her voice level. The beacon doesn't lie. Whoever grabbed that file is carrying my tag right now. Pierce straightened, brows drawn together just enough to look concerned. And what exactly is this beacon? Because last I checked, trainees don't have access to that kind of technology. Donnelly cut him off. Don't matter where it came from. It's the first lead we've had in months. We follow it. The recruits shifted uncomfortably. Taryn muttered, so she did plant something. Operating outside the chain of command. What else is she hiding? Aria met her eyes, steady as stone, enough to keep you breathing. The room went silent. Donnelly gestured to a tech at the console. Track the signal. On the monitor, a blinking dot appeared. It wasn't near the gate or the perimeter. It was inside the base, moving through the north wing. Rosa leaned forward. That's the medical wing, or the perfect disguise, Aria added. Everyone looks past a medic. The dot paused, then moved again. Slowly, like someone pushing a cart. The recruits exchanged glances. The memory of the auburn-haired contractor flickered in all their minds. Kara whispered, "It's her, or someone who wants us to think it's her," Aria countered. She looked at Donnelly. "That signal could be planted. We need to confirm before the whole base chases a decoy." Donnelly rubbed his jaw. "Either way, we flush them tonight. No more ghosts." Pierce's voice slid in smooth. "Or we let me handle this quietly. Too much panic could compromise training integrity." "With respect, Chief, your recruits aren't ready for counterintelligence games." Aria cut him off. "If you wait, they'll walk. Traitors don't stall, they extract." Donnelly made the call. "Mobilize a squad. Recruits stay here. Vo with me." Taryn's jaw dropped. "She gets to go? After everything, she goes," Donnelly said. "Because whether you like it or not, she sees things you don't." They filed out. Behind them, the recruits whispered, torn between suspicion and awe. In the command center glow, Taryn's scowl burned brightest, but it was Rosa who muttered what none of them wanted to admit. "If she's right, then we've all been blind." The chase hadn't begun yet, but trust was already fracturing. And when it finally snapped, no one would be safe from what spilled out. Floodlights carved white scars across the night sky. The sirens hadn't stopped since the beacon pulsed, and now the whole north wing was a hive of boots and shouted orders. Master Chief Donnelly led at a dead run, Aria Vô one step behind, her breath steady, her eyes locked on the live feed clipped to Donnelly's radio. The blinking signal crawled toward the vehicle depot. They burst through the last corridor and into the open air. Wind whipped salt and sand into their faces. Ahead, a military ambulance roared to life, headlights snapping on like eyes wide with guilt. Behind the wheel, a silhouette. Beside it, pushing a cart up the ramp, auburn hair catching the floodlights. The medic Pierce said she was cleared. A sergeant barked, but his voice broke off when Donnelly snapped, "Clearance don't mean loyalty. Stop that vehicle." Aria was already moving. She sprinted, knees high, cutting across the tarmac like she owned the ground. The ambulance jolted forward, gears grinding, engine howling. MPs fired at the tires, missed. The vehicle swerved toward the west fence. Aria launched herself onto the rear step, fingers catching the steel just as the doors slammed. Metal tore her palms, but she hauled herself inside. rolling between crates strapped down with frayed belts. The medic spun, eyes wide, knife flashing silver in the floodlight strobe. Aria caught the wrist mid-arc. The blade screeched off a crate. They grappled in the cramped space, steel and breath colliding. The medic fought hard, trained, not a contractor at all, but a professional hiding in scrubs. The vehicle bucked over gravel. Aria twisted, dropped her weight, and the knife skittered away. She drove the heel of her hand into the medic's chest, slammed her against the bulkhead and hissed, "Who sent you?" The medic spat blood, smiled with broken teeth. "You already know." Before Aria could answer, gunfire shredded the night. Tires exploded. The ambulance fishtailed, crashed into a sand berm. She slammed against the ceiling, rolled, landed half on the medic, half on cold steel. The back doors ripped open. Major Evan Pierce stood there, uniform crisp, pistol leveled. MPs flanked him, but their muzzles dipped uncertainly. Pierce's voice was calm, almost regretful. "Step aside, Lieutenant Commander. This one's mine." Donnelly arrived seconds later, boots skidding to a halt. "Pierce, what the hell are you doing?" Pierce smiled, cleaning up. "You wouldn't understand." His eyes shifted to Aria. "But you do. You've been in the shadows long enough. You know the game." Aria's grip tightened on the medic's collar. "You've been the leak all along, hiding behind your own badge." "Badge buys time," Pierce said evenly, "and time buys power." He raised the pistol. "Move." For the first time all night, the MPs hesitated, looking from Donnelly to Pierce to Aria. Rank against truth. Aria made her choice. She let go of the medic, but her hand wasn't empty. She snapped a beacon chip, small, silver, onto the medic's tactical glove, the same glove she'd spotted days ago in the laundry. "Go ahead," she said, standing, arms slightly raised. "Take your prize." Pierce's eyes flickered, triumph curling his mouth. He yanked the medic up, shoved her toward the MPs. "Detain her. I'll secure the files." He snatched the decoy drive from the medic's vest pocket, holding it aloft like treasure. Aria's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Funny thing about treasure," she said, voice carrying over the sirens. "Sometimes it's bait." The beacon chip lit, floodlights re-angled automatically, triggered by the tag. In an instant, Pierce was glowing in every infrared scope on base, painted like prey. Donnelly's roar split the night. "Drop it, Major." Pierce froze. MP's rifles swung up, unwavering now. The medic sagged, hands cuffed. Aria stepped forward, her voice quiet but lethal. "First rule of SEAL work, Pierce, never touch what you don't own." Pierce's pistol wavered. For a heartbeat, he looked like he might pull the trigger anyway, burn everything down with him. Then the weight of every gun around him bent his shoulders. He dropped the weapon. The sound it made on the tarmac was small. The silence after was massive. Donnelly cuffed him himself, jaw set like stone. "Traitor in my house," he muttered. "Not anymore." Aria exhaled slowly, finally letting her heart admit the sprint. She turned to the recruits standing behind the cordon, Taryn, Rosa, Kara, faces pale with shock. They'd seen everything, the medic unmasked, the major exposed, the frail trainee standing in the wreckage like she'd been forged for it. She looked them dead in the eye. "You wanted to know who I was. Lieutenant Commander Aria Vô, SEAL Team 7. And I don't need you to trust me, I just need you to keep up." The rotors of a helicopter thundered overhead, searchlights chasing the last shadows off the base. For the first time in months, the facility was clean, but the echo of betrayal and the image of the woman they'd mocked would last far longer. The floodlights dimmed as MPs led Major Pierce away in cuffs, his once polished stride broken into something smaller, hollow. The auburn-haired medic shuffled beside him, wrists bound, her disguise in tatters. The air still reeked of burnt rubber and gunpowder, but for the first time in weeks the base breathed clean. Master Chief Donnelly stood with his arms folded, the hard lines of his face softer now, almost weary. He looked at Aria Vô, the smallest figure on the tarmac, and gave a slow nod. "Lieutenant Commander," he said, the title landing heavy in every ear around them. You just saved this program from being gutted from the inside." The recruits froze, the words replayed in their minds, reshaping everything they thought they knew. Aria Vô, the quiet trainee, the one mocked in the showers, the one written off as weak, wasn't just a SEAL, she was their commander. Taryn Blake's mouth opened, but no sound came. Her pride, her certainty, all the sharp edges she'd clung to cracked under the truth. Finally she whispered, "You let me talk to you like you were nothing." Aria's eyes met hers, steady, calm. "You showed me who you were. That's the point of training." She stepped closer, voice soft but cutting through the night. "Strength isn't proven by mocking someone smaller. It's proven when you carry someone heavier. Remember that, Blake." Rosa Vega exhaled slowly, her analytical stare tempered now with something like respect. "You could have exposed yourself a dozen times. Why wait?" "Because the spy wasn't just watching me," Aria said. "They were watching you. If I showed my hand too early, they'd vanish, and none of us would be safe." She looked at Kara Quinn, whose hands still trembled from the adrenaline. "That tunnel, when you thought you couldn't breathe? That's what this job feels like every day. You either find a way to move forward, or you drown." "You moved forward." Kara's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Because you reminded me where the rope was." Aria's gaze softened. "One day, you'll be the rope for someone else." The recruits fell silent. Around them, the base buzzed with recovery. MPs directing vehicles, instructors whispering about betrayal and trust. But the four of them stood still, caught in a circle of revelation. Donnelly broke it with a grunt. "You all mocked her. You thought she didn't belong. Tonight you saw who she really is. The next time you judge someone by size, by silence, by how little they brag, remember this night." He swept his gaze across the recruits, his voice like gravel against steel. "Because you'll never get a lesson this costly without paying blood again." Aria turned away, the tension of the mission bleeding off her shoulders at last. She walked back toward the showers, the place where it had all begun. Steam still clung to the tiled walls, the scent of bleach and sweat mixing in the humid air. She hung her own pair of gloves on the hook, a gesture no one would understand but her. A full circle, a reminder that even the smallest gear, when used with purpose, can end wars. Taryn appeared at the doorway, hesitant now, stripped of her arrogance. "Commander," she began, voice catching. Aria didn't let her finish. She raised a hand. "Save it. Regret doesn't carry weight. Actions do. If you want to make it, carry better next time." For once, Taryn nodded without a retort. Outside, dawn split the horizon, painting the base in bruised orange and gold. Soldiers filed back to their routines, but whispers spread like wildfire. The recruit who wasn't a recruit, the commander who caught a spy with nothing but patience, precision, and resolve. Aria Vô stepped into that sunrise with her head high, her frame small against the massive sky. She didn't need to explain who she was anymore. The truth had already rewritten itself into every corner of the base. And now, it's your turn to carry this story forward. Because what you just heard isn't a legend, it's a warning and a reminder. The world underestimates people like Aria Vô until the moment it can't afford to. If you want to hear more untold stories of strength, betrayal, and the quiet warriors who change everything, hit subscribe and ring the bell for a simple woman. These are the battles the history books will never print, but here, you'll never miss them.